So the morning after the night before, this is my post-fight reaction video to Amir Khan versus Saul Canelo Alvarez. By now, most of you watching this video will know Amir Khan was knocked out in the 6th round. Canelo Alvarez threw a feint through a large overhand right, which caught Amir Khan bang on the chin, as Jim Watt would say, and Amir Khan was instantly laid out. He went down very heavily. He went down straight backwards, so his head smashed off the canvas quite badly on the way down, and it didn't look good for the first few seconds after the knockout. I must admit, it looked like he'd been it looked like he went down like he'd been shot. Let's put it that way, which is understandable given the size and the nature of the punch that Canelo Alvarez was able to connect with. It appears that Amir Khan recovered after he was on the floor for a good while, but he seemed in good enough condition to give a post-fight interview afterwards, and thankfully it appears that he's okay and there's not going to be lasting damage. He was even talking about going back to fight at 147 pounds, which I think is would be really beneficial for him. He's going to be a far better fighter at 147 than 155, and fighting the likes of the guys at 147 as opposed to Canelo Alvarez. But just to break down the fight, Amir Khan started very quickly. Historically he's been a quick starter. His movement, his outside work was spot on in the first round. It was probably sort of first round that Amir Khan fans were hoping and dreaming for. It was he completely sort of outmaneuvered and was able to dominate the round with his eye-catching punches from long range. Canelo was, took a little bit of time to get going. He's not always the quickest starter. Sometimes he was a little bit wild with some of the punches he was throwing, and Amir Khan was looking good in there. Similarly, the second round, whilst it probably wasn't quite as dominant as the first round, was very much an Amir Khan round as well, following a similar pattern. What we began to see as the fight wore on is Canelo making slight adjustments in there, which I think was key. Canelo worked out very early on, and it was probably obvious even before the fight, but he worked out very early on that if the fight continued with the pattern it was going to in the first 2 rounds, it may not be his night. So what we saw Canelo doing was implement a sustained body attack. I think I saw afterwards that Canelo landed something like 50% of the power punches that he threw, or 51%, which truly is remarkable. I mean, people who think Canelo is a crude brawler with power need to look at that. 51% of his power punches were landed against a fighter like Amir Khan. And I think Canelo landed something like 8 or 9 times as many shots to Amir Khan's body as Amir Khan landed to Canelo's body, which is also a very telling statistic. And I thought as early as like the 3rd, 4th, 5th round, there was a slight drop in pace from Amir Khan, a slight drop in movement, a slight drop in being out of range, a slight drop in output, and I thought Canelo was starting to become the more active fighter who potentially was doing some of the better work in there. And my personal viewpoint is that by the time this knockout came, the fight was actually slipping away from Amir Khan. Khan, look, I'm not going to sit here and say that Khan has a chin like Oliver McCall or like David Tua. Khan doesn't have one of the sport's great chins. But Khan showed in this fight that, to an extent, he could live with Canelo's power. He ate 25, 30 shots to the body. He ate several left hooks. Clearly he couldn't live with the punch that Canelo was able to land on him, which we'll come to in a second. But Khan was alive in this fight. He was mixing it up well with Canelo. He was having spells of success with Canelo. But fundamentally, Canelo, whilst he maybe doesn't have the real eye-catching flurries of combinations from the outside than Amir Khan does, Canelo is a really educated boxer with the way he cuts down the ring, with the way he applies pressure, with the body work that he's able to bank early on. And Canelo was successful in this fight. And I think even if that punch hadn't landed, even if this had gone longer, he would have been on a route to a points victory. But in the 6th round, Canelo comes out, he catches Amir Khan early, straight away in the round. And I don't say it hurt Amir Khan, but it certainly was a big punch that landed that, let's say, buzzed him a little bit, gave him a wake-up call. And then, later on in the round, Canelo lands what you can only describe as the perfect knockout. He threw a feint. Amir Khan, obviously aware of the guy's power, having been caught earlier in the round, reacted instantly to the feint by putting his hands up and leaving a bit of a gap, trying to block the feint. And Canelo stops the punch short and puts his whole body weight through like an overhand right type punch that catches Khan straight on the chin. And it's, I'm afraid it's good night, and it's good night in one of the most brutal ways that you're going to see in professional boxing. And it's it's really good that Khan was okay, and Khan was able to come to his senses and looked like he was recovered quickly, because when he went down initially, Canelo goes over to him and gets on bended knees next to him. I don't know if he's praying or something like that, but it certainly looked like a frightening time to be an Amir Khan fan. Or it wasn't nice to see. I like Amir Khan, and even though I predicted this fight would end in this fashion, you don't want to see that happen at all. But Khan, as I say, he's got stuff to offer in boxing, but we have weight classes for a reason. We really do. We have weight classes for a reason, and Amir Khan is a 147-pound fighter who has fought at even lower weight divisions in the past. He's got no business at 155. You saw him at the weigh-in. You could see his conditioning was good. You could see extra fat there. You could see less definition than we're used to. And I know he has to cut weight to make 147, but I think 150, 151, I think there were 3 or 4 pounds to come off him at the weigh-in, and I think he could cut to 147 after that. I think his power is going to have more of an effect at 147. I think his punch resistance may be improved. He's going to have to be essentially against smaller, weaker men, which is an advantage, certainly. I just don't see him really as someone who's going to have success at light middleweight or middleweight, regardless of any catch weight, I'm afraid. I feel that had he come in a bit lighter, maybe he could have had higher work output. Maybe he could have stayed at long range a bit more. I don't know. Maybe he could have been slightly more evasive. I don't think the style of matchup was right for him regardless, but I think the weight class was a wrong decision with no re-adjacent clause or anything like that. I'll give credit to Amir Khan. He takes big fights. He fights big opponents, big in name and in terms of size, and he went into this fight as a massive underdog. So I give credit to him for taking the fight. It was an entertaining fight while it lasted, that must be said, and it was certainly a great matchup to be made. It's just not going to be a competitive fight for me against a guy like Canelo at this sort of weight. As for Saul Canelo Alvarez, actually one other thing on Amir Khan, I thought his post-fight interview was slightly bizarre actually. He seemed very much to focus on Canelo not fighting Triple G, which I don't really understand, because if Canelo had fought Triple G, he wouldn't have had the fight with Khan. Khan wouldn't have had the opportunity that he so desperately craved. Khan wouldn't have had that 8-figure payday that he supposedly had. So I thought that was a bit odd, and I didn't see any bad blood between Canelo and Khan. I thought Canelo was very respectful after the stoppage, so I thought that was odd to come out and having just been horrifically knocked out by Canelo to start trying to burn Canelo for not taking the Golovkin fight. For what it's worth, I think Canelo should take the Golovkin fight. Canelo is, for me, very drained at 155. I'm not saying he necessarily would be the biggest at 160, but I actually think he'd be bigger than Triple G, and I think Canelo could easily be fighting at 160, and it may even improve Canelo's performance if he didn't have to cut that extra 5 pounds. Canelo gave some big words after the fight, giving an indication he would be inclined to fight Golovkin. Let me say I believe it when I see it. I'm not sure Oscar wants that fight. I think there are other big money options out there for Canelo that have less reward, less risk, sorry. Not as much reward, but less risk. And I think they may be inclined to let Triple G get another year or two older. You know, he's already in his mid-30s before they look to take on that class. But Canelo, he's a very good fighter. He's a very good fighter. He's an underrated boxer. He has got real power. He does some very smart things in there. Counter punches nicely, punches to the body well, puts punches together well. He sets traps. His movement is sophisticated. Even if he is a bit flat-footed, the way he moves is sophisticated. And there's a lot going for him. And I think at this stage, you know, Triple G aside, he is probably either the second best middleweight in the division or the third best middleweight in the division, depending on how you rank Billy Joe Saunders. But yeah, he's very much in that mix. And Canelo is, I know people don't like what he does with weight classes, and people think he's got a few gift decisions, but he has already built a Hall of Fame resume, I think, and he is not far off building a pound-for-pound resume. I'm not saying he's fought better middleweights than Triple G, because I don't believe he has. But if you talk pound for pound, I think he's fought better fighters than Triple G. However controversial, the guy's got wins over Amir Khan, the guy's got a win over Erislandy Lara, the guy's got a win over Austin Trout. And the list goes on. You know, there's some decent names there, and people forget how young Canelo actually is. I know he's been in a lot of fights, but still a long way for him to go, and he's an exciting guy to watch. Let me know your thoughts on this fight, people. How do you see it going? Where do you want both men to go from here? Were you surprised by Canelo's performance? Were you surprised by Khan's performance? Let me know your thoughts, people. How are you scoring it at the time of the stoppage? If you've enjoyed this video, do hit the thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please press subscribe so you can catch out my other videos. Many thanks for watching.